Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be my Constantine episode 5 video. We finally got to meet Jim Corrigan, big character from the comics, so I'll totally talk about his backstory. It really opens the door for big cosmic magical constructs. During Comic-Con, the creator said the magical corner of the DC universe was wide open to them, so I'll also talk about some other big characters I think the show could do now that they're doing Jim Corrigan. Careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet, but starting with top 5 moments. Number 5, meet Jim Corrigan. On the show, he's being played by Emmett Scanlon, who I thought did a great job. Behind the scenes, Angelica Salaya, who plays Zed, said that he and Matt Ryan seem like brothers from another mother. Cut from the same cloth, I think was the word she used. The Jim Corrigan character has actually been around for a long time. He didn't start out as a DC character. He was created by Jerry Siegel, but he debuted in a title called More Fun Comics during 1940. So he's been around for a long time. But he's most known for becoming the Spectre. That's mostly what people think whenever they say Jim Corrigan. Although the Spectre has been 3 different characters. Even though Zed had the vision of him becoming the Spectre at the end of the episode, which was a huge WTF moment, it's possible they might change just a few minor things just to update the story just a little bit. But don't expect him to become the Spectre this season or anytime soon. In the comics, when he became the Spectre, he was killed by a mob boss, but before his soul could pass to heaven, the Archangel Michael intercepted it and chose him to become the vessel for God's spirit of vengeance, which is what the Spectre is. As the name implies, he goes around seeking vengeance for God when people do terrible things. The cool thing about that is that the punishments that he hands out to criminals that he takes down is usually really creative and really horrific. Like I think it was sometime after Infinite Crisis, but I think that he turned Dr. Light into a living candle that just slowly melted away. It's very Tales from the Crypt or Outer Limits Justice type stuff. Somewhere between horror and science fiction, but always very cool. As he exists right now on the TV show, you can think of him as being kind of like a Bullock character, although it seems like he's more of a believer now given the events of this episode. The really cool thing about him coming on the show now, though, is that it opens the door for big cosmic constructs. That includes Phantom Stranger, Naboo, Michael, Lucifer, Trinity of Sin, the Circle of Eternity, even the Presence, although I'm not expecting to see that anytime soon. Those things are like highest order power, so I don't expect to see them walking around anytime soon on the show. Of any of the characters, I think Phantom Stranger would be one of the first ones to appear because he gets kind of tied up in Corrigan's backstory in the comics, at least the current comics, New 52, even though technically the Constantine show is taking from the Hellblazer comics, so it gets a little mixed and matched sometimes. Just in general, when you're thinking about Corrigan Spectre, think about him pre-New 52. Number 4, Chaz versus the Alley Ghost. This was a mixture of like WTF horror and comedy by the end. I mean, it kind of turned into comedy by the end. They explained it a little bit in the first episode, but Chaz cannot die. I always wonder how many people forget stuff like that, so whenever the crazy model ghost went apeshit on him with a pair of scissors, I feel like there were a lot of people that were super surprised. I knew that he wasn't going to die, so I was curious to see where they were going to go with it, like where the scene was headed. I think it was just meant to build to that moment with the medics where he just sits up and says, "Oh, I'm okay, just a little flesh wound." I don't think it worked well as a jump scare, but I do think it worked as a joke. The only problem about the Chaz stuff is that it was really entertaining, but I feel like the Constantine Papa Midnight story was so big that it overpowered the rest of the story. Now that Zed is on the show, I feel like Chaz is kind of getting pushed to the side a little bit, so they're going to have to try and find an interesting way to give his stories more weight. One way to do that, and what they kind of did in this episode, was go the Groundhog's Day route. That's just whereby Chaz takes advantage of the fact that he can't die, so he keeps going after murderous ghosts again and again and again. I can't imagine how gory that would have looked if they would have shown each time that he died. They only showed him with that model ghost a couple times, but it's implied that he came after her several times. Just expect this to continue, where they go after a murderer, and Chaz goes in first, because if he dies, it's not a big deal, he'll come right back. Number 3, Zed's backstory explained. They're just teasing it out on the show. I think they're going to modify her story from the comics, because she had a pretty short run, but I feel like Angelica Salaya is going to be on the show for a long time, or at least as long as the show runs. I totally don't mind, I love the actress, I think she's doing a great job, she's a great addition to the show. In the episode, Zed was very mysterious about her past. All we know is that she's running away from something at home. Her big story in the comics, in the Hellblazer comics, was Resurrection Crusade. She ends up running from a couple different organizations. The Resurrection Crusade is a religious group headed by her father, who believes in a prophecy that the new Son of God will be born of a woman who ends up being Zed. So in the comics, the father that she's running from thinks that she's going to be like the new Virgin Mary. But I think they'll incorporate some Resurrection Crusade into her TV character. There are also a couple ways I think that they could use the Resurrection Crusade story to tie in with the Rising Darkness that I'll explain. Number 2, Constantine and Papa Midnight. Hands down, one of the best parts of this episode. I was kind of bummed whenever Papa Midnight first came on and I wasn't able to do a video for that episode. Michael James Shaw, totally amazing as Papa Midnight. I always get really happy when I see that he's going to be in an episode. If you guys are watching Arrow 2, he serves a similar purpose in the narrative that Brandon Routh's Ray Palmer does. It's like you have Constantine, who's arguably a fairly powerful person. You need someone else to be a foil for him, like another big force that can challenge him that is not a sexual interest like Zed is. For now, they're friendly characters, but really it's more of a neutral relationship. Papa Midnight seems like much more of a practical person, so if this Rising Darkness storyline goes a little bit south, like if things start to turn, it's possible he could betray Constantine. Although I don't think that he's the person close to Constantine that he foretold would betray him. I felt like their dance voodoo spell was a good teaser for Justice League Dark. Something like what that might look like. A bunch of really powerful magical figures who don't necessarily agree with each other. Think about it this way, Constantine throws shade on voodoo, Papa Midnight throws shade on Constantine for being a street wizard. It's like low-level magical racism. Some really cool things about the Papa Midnight scenes. 1, he has a radio to hell through his sister, who he also sent to hell, just like Constantine unwittingly sent Astra. And when he's performing his rituals, trying to help people communicate with their dead loved ones, he gives a big Papa Legba shout out, which totally reminded me of American Horror Story from last year. You know, the Coven storyline. And my number 1 moment, someone close to Constantine will betray him for the coming darkness. They implied that the coming darkness would achieve whatever it's trying to do through someone close to Constantine, meaning that Constantine does have a chance to stop it, and someone's going to betray him to keep him from stopping it, who I think is going to be Zed. At least that's what is implied, given her mysterious backstory, the Resurrection Crusade, and the Army of the Damned. That's why I think that they're taking Zed's backstory from the comics, tying it in with this Rising Darkness, the demon Nergal, who I think is going to be the big bad this season, and they're going to use that as the season 1 finale. Let me know though, what was your favorite moment, and here's my big question for you guys. Which next big magical person or group do you want to see on the show? You know, Phantom Stranger, Naboo, you know, actual Dr. Fate, Trinity of Sin, Council of Eternity, you know, any big magical construct. They're still going to be in production for a little while. They haven't finished filming the finale or anything like that, so there's still potential for them to change things. I think depending on how the next couple of episodes do, they'll alter their plans, especially if they get a season 2 pickup or they get a full season order. Right now, they still only have the 12 episodes. Just in general though, I gave the episode a solid B+. Totally awesome way to introduce a major character from the comics. I always appreciate it when they take big chances like that. Really, the most important thing to me is that whenever they do big things like that, is that the actors that they cast are amazing, or that they're cast in the right role. Like there's always amazing actors that get cast in the wrong role. Like imagine if Tom Hiddleston had been Thor and Chris Hemsworth had been Loki. I think the Thor movies and Avengers would have been so much less interesting. Emmett Scanlon, totally amazing as Jim Corrigan. I don't know how many times they're going to be featuring him this season. He'll probably show up at least once more before that 12th episode, the final one, or whichever the final one's going to be. Really, the other big development in this episode was the ship between Zed and Constantine. I'm totally okay with it. It doesn't seem like they're going to lean on that too hard. It's going to be more of a playful banter. I don't know how much Constantine works as a character in terms of romantic comedy. He's a funny character, but I usually see his humor as flowing from a really tragic place. So I feel like if they ever did get together, like they ever did consummate the relationship, Zed would be killed off in the next episode. So we do not want that. Let them just make their innuendos for now. Again, Michael James Shaw totally tore up every scene he was in. I really feel like he could have his own spin-off show. I'm still waiting for a good Chaz episode. I feel like he will get his day in the sun. Like he'll get a backstory episode where they kind of explain how he got where he is now. Overall though, great episode. And next week actually looks like it's going to be really cool too. It's called Rage of Caliban. It's going to be next Friday. They're not going to go on break or anything like that. Be sure to subscribe to get my video. And feel free to make requests for Constantine bonus videos whenever it goes on break in a couple weeks. In another corner of the DC universe though, the Flash vs. Arrow crossover is coming in a couple weeks. New Flash next week. No new Arrow. Arrow's going on break for just a week before they come back for episode 8 for that big crossover. So get excited for that. And in case you haven't seen me talk about it, I have new links up here. If you guys are watching this on your mobile phone or on your tablet, it's the same as the links over here. But click here for last week's Constantine video and click here to catch up on Arrow. Thank you so much for watching. So let's all high five. I'll see you guys tonight.